All right. Hey everybody. How you doing? Hope you're well. Today we are going to be talking about personas and marketing. But first we're going to do our little spiel to let everybody know what is what. As soon as I pull up my notes, of course. So, hi everybody. My name is the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio. I am the founder and Pontifex Maximus of an organization known as the Cult of Copy. We are currently a Facebook discussion group for the darker arts of persuasion, particularly relating to the world of marketing. If you are interested in that kind of thing, you can join us at www.cultofcopy.com. I don't even think you need a www. I'm not sure. I'm not a technical person. But this is the Cult of Copy show, which is a weekly show recorded live via Google Hangout Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. We haven't quite figured out how to do it yet, but eventually these episodes will also be a podcast available on iTunes, Android, and other outlets. No matter which outlet you happen to be watching and or listening to this on, please do subscribe if you like what you hear. I am still not super sure how to get YouTube comments showing up so I can see them, but I don't know, maybe we don't need any of this stuff. What did I do here? There we go. So last week we talked a little bit about mastery in the sense of I was showing comments last week and now I don't know how to do it. I apologize for my technical difficulties. This is only episode 1. Last week was episode 0. You think I would have learned how to do these things better. Last week we talked about the concept of mastery in the context of the famous con artist Victor Lustig. This week what I wanted to talk about is the concept of a persona, a marketing persona. And even if you're not involved in a business, any sort of organization can benefit from having a figurehead, a spokesman, a voice, a face, some sort of character who is out in front so that any messaging the company puts out comes from someone. So if any promises are made, any guarantees are made, any, positive statements or counteracting negative statements, there should be some voice, some figure, some face. Even Google, for example, has a guy like Matt Cutts to be their voice when it comes to interacting with the world of SEO, if you're familiar with that kind of thing. But that's just an example of how a big, giant, faceless corporation saw the need to have a character, a figure, someone out there being the voice so that promises and statements that come from their company feel like they're coming from a person who has some kind of authority over the matter. The first thing to think about when you're talking about these marketing personas is we're not really talking about inventing a whole new character, right? We're not talking about making anybody necessarily artificial, no fake name. What we're really talking about is if you're like me, where you are the face and voice behind your own business, what you see of me or hear, as it were, on these shows or really in any message that I put out there isn't actually me. And I don't want that to seem weird. It's I portray a character that I created, and it's based on me. It's amplified, it's augmented, it's exaggerated, but it's not really me. It may surprise people that only know me through the internet and interacting with me as part of what I do for a living. I'm mostly kind of an introvert. I'm actually a pretty shy person. I usually keep to myself. Not really the kind of person to start up conversations with strangers or anything like that. I'm sure I seem friendly enough on these kind of things, or if you ever meet me at a live event, but I kind of had to practice and get used to doing that kind of thing, which I did because I knew it would be valuable. Um, that's not to say I'm not authentic. The things that I express, the values that I express, the things that I say I support are things that I actually support, and the things that I say I don't are things that I don't. But these things are amplified and exaggerated and put out and expressed on purpose in a way that is meant to do a few things that we're going to talk about in a little more detail. But first, I want to back up and talk about what personas actually are. And if you look at the definition of the word, where it actually came from, not a lot of people realize this, but everyone's seen that symbol for drama that's like the tragedy mask and the comedy mask, right? Like a smiling mask and a frowning mask side by side, and they use it like to represent theater. It's that kind of decoration, right? It's a pretty universal symbol. Well, those are actually personae, which are masks that were used in Roman theater, which obviously pre-existed public address systems or big screens like they have in theaters now so the people in the nosebleed seats can see and hear. What they did at those times, they were in these big open-air amphitheaters, and the actors would wear these masks with exaggerated facial features so that the people way in the back could see what they were acting, what emotion was supposed to be on that character's face. These masks also had a little megaphone built inside of them to amplify the actor's voice so that the crowd could hear them. I love that connection, which is why I specifically use the word persona when referring to these beneficial figureheads that we're talking about creating, because first of all, the metaphor of a mask is very important, and we're going to talk about why a little later in the show. But that idea that the performance is authentic, but you're performing it from behind a mask that exaggerates it just a little bit and amplifies it just a little bit so that the audience can connect to it and be excited and engage with it. And it does require a little bit of acting, a little bit of performing to get it right. You know, let's pull up the notes here. So I'm sure it's probably weirded some people out who are watching that I'm talking about creating a character based on yourself that's exaggerated. What does that mean to portray a particular character in your marketing? So what we're looking for in a portrayal is for you to create a unique voice, is what they would call it. I'm a writer, so I think of it that way. They talk about writers having a unique voice. Obviously, if you're a figure on video or you speak on stage, you're going to want some kind of look or something like that too. I have the beard and the brightly colored shoes, whatever it is. Those things are meant to, you know, like I actually do look like this. I didn't do it just for the sake of appearances, but there is a bit of a unique look to it. If that's important to you, you can make that part of a factor too. I mentioned I'm a bit of an introvert. These kind of things are sort of icebreakers. You know what I mean? People say, oh, bright, I like your bright shoes. And I'll say, okay, great. Now we're having a conversation. And it's not weird for me to introduce myself. That's one little tip you can use. Maybe you're not that weird about it like I am. But more what we're talking about when I say a voice is you want a unique style. You want something that sort of expresses who you are. And it could be in the mannerisms of your speech, which should show up, by the way, in the way that you write. They say that marketing writing should sound the way people speak and not necessarily be proper grammatical writing. And I tend to agree with that, that if you're trying to use the written word to express your personality, certain quirks and mannerisms should come through that are inherent in the way that you speak that may not necessarily be, you know, proper writing. It's less of a focus to be correct and proper than it is to be interesting and unique and, more importantly, identifiable. I don't think I necessarily have a style that's detectable just like in my prose, maybe other than using weird vocabulary words now and then, but there are certain things that I do to lend structure to my writing that are sort of unique to it. So if you've ever seen any articles I've written in the Cult of Copy or in my newsletter, I will have 13 points in a post because it's the cult of copy. 13 is a superstitious number. It kind of fit, and I actually came across that on accident because I was just doing numbered lists of things because it's an easy way to bang out an article really quickly. And I happened to just be doing as many numbered points as I could think of in one sitting. And I happened to hit 13 of them 2 times in a row. And someone in my audience noticed and pointed it out and said, "Oh, I get it, it's 13 because of the cult thing." I'm like, "No, not really, but that is a good idea, so I'm going to claim it and use that." And now I sort of use it as a focus. And it's cool because it's actually a challenge, because if I push, if I try hard, I can come up with like usually 10. And those last 3 are usually a stretch, and I have to really think, and I actually invest a little bit more mental resource, and I try a little bit harder to meet that challenge. So like 13 is great, because like 15 I would be banging my head against the wall to come up with 2 more. 13's like right in the right spot where it's like a nice challenge to come up with just a couple more than I can come up with easily. But that's just an example. I don't mean to digress. That's just an example of how, even if you're not putting y'alls and things in your copy the way that I do, because I actually use the word y'all, being from the South, you don't have to do things like that necessarily. It could be conveyed in structure and format and consistency using those things. Another factor of having a voice that your audience can identify with is, of course, the let's say the fidelity or the degree of resolution that you give to your personality. So one of the reasons right now that we're having a video chat show, which is then turned into a podcast, is because it's important to me, I think, that if I'm going to be a public figure, not just at the front of my business, but also sort of a representative for my niche and for what it is that I like to talk about, it's important for me to give people a realistic idea, a 3-dimensional picture of what that looks like. So I don't just exist in their mind in the written word. I want them to know what I look like. I want them to know what I sound like. What are my movements when I talk? What is my delivery? A lot of times I get in trouble just posting on Facebook because I'll say things and people think I'm being mean or like I'm in attack mode. But if you know me in person, or if you've ever seen me on video, I'm obviously a pretty jolly person. If you'd seen me say it out loud with a smile, people wouldn't take it so harshly, but sometimes I forget to type in a little smiley face. That's neither here nor there, but the idea that I'm trying to get at is you want multiple views and experiences that sort of combine all the senses, as many as you can get. Obviously, I'm not offering any smells or tastes, but sights and sounds. I do go out and meet people at events. I interact with people. That's important if you're trying to be a public and influential figure, because those are things that your audience remembers about you. And then later on, hopefully, if this works the way that it does, on paper when I read about why you should do these things, later on when people read things that I've written, hopefully in their imagination is a picture of me, and I'm talking and waving my hands around like I do here, and you can hear my voice. And then because I try to write the way that I sound, hopefully that illusion is amplified, because I want my messages to come across very personally, very directly. I want people to feel like I am writing directly to them, even though it's just a thing that I typed up on my iPad and posted to a website that I know thousands of people might read. So that's voice, right? In addition to having a unique voice, one of the things that you want to express to people to really show that you are a 3-dimensional character is you want to express values. And what I mean by values are, what are the things that matter to you? Why do you do what you do? What do you invest your free time in when you're not working? What things do you enjoy? What things do you support when you see them? It's one of these things where it's uh, I guess you can think of it as a positive attractor, meaning when you express things that you value and people who are watching share those same values, it's a positive attractor that draws you together. When they draw the circle of people who are like me, now all of a sudden you're in it in a number of ways. So when I share with people that I have a toddler son and a newborn due on June, the early part of June, all of a sudden other parents, and particularly fathers who are, my age, maybe younger, all of a sudden lump us together in a particular way. If I say, you can't quite see it, but over there on a bookshelf are like tons of books about medieval history because I'm a nerd about it, and they always put them in the bargain bin at the bookstore, and I'm a sucker for a deal. So every time I go, I get more and more of them, and now I actually need to buy more bookshelves for my office. But when I express something like that, anyone else who is interested in that kind of thing, now we're sort of in that same circle. And even though it has no relevance to what I do professionally, the more little tidbits like that that you put out, things that you value that really aren't tied specifically to your work, but they're what your work justifies, right? Like they're the reasons you do what you do, that you're interacting with this audience. First of all, it lends authenticity. It makes you, again, more real. It adds fidelity and resolution to the person that you are because you exist in real life. You're not just there to entertain them or be on camera or teach them about whatever it is that you're trying to sell them. You are an actual person with actual values. You care about things that exist outside your common interest with this audience that you're sharing a topic with. In addition to that, it allows you to make these little connections that make people feel like you're on the same team in a way. And sure, not all of them are going to match up with every person in your audience, but some of them will. And the more of them you put out there, the more of them will engage with them. And the benefit of this is that it's just part of human experience that people forget details that aren't relevant to them. So if I say, I'm into medieval history and you don't give a crap about that, it's not going to drive you away. I'm not wasting your time with it. You'll just ignore it. And then by the time the next message comes around from me, you'll forget that I even referenced it, really. The things that stick, stick. The things that don't. But the cumulative effect of that is, over time, the more someone listens to you and gets these details that draw you closer together, the more they feel like you actually are together. You're occupants of the same universe. You're walking the same path together side by side. You have all these things in common. And when we feel a kinship and a common, I guess a camaraderie is what I'm looking for, where they feel like you're doing the same things, you like the same stuff, you're on the same path. Of course you'd be friends, right? Like you met the guy on the same road as you. You're taking the trip together, in other words, into your niche as they explore it with you and, buy your stuff and learn more about whatever it is that you teach them. So in addition to values, though, the flip side of this, and this is one that I think a lot of people maybe mess up, the flip side of it is what I call villains. And I'm a nerd for alliteration, so all of these words start with V. Villains are the negative side. What won't you stand for? What don't you like? What do you hate? Not just about your industry, but what peeves you when you encounter it in the real world? What sort of interrupts your day? Most people trying to create these figures that, that interact with their marketplaces, usually they're kind of scared to share the villain side of things, the negative side, because they don't want to bring people's attention towards that. But I disagree with that if you do it the right way, because, you don't want to start like a smear campaign, or you don't want to express true hatred, but like certainly annoyance, indignation, especially if it's like a righteous kind of indignation where you're just like morally outraged over something, but it's something that most people would be. By expressing these things, it makes you seem even more authentic, because there is that perception that you don't share those things unless you're with someone you really trust. And if you're a figure that's sharing this with someone who is technically a stranger, it sort of works on their brain in a particular way where even if they're just watching a video of you online or something, they feel like he wouldn't express that to me if he didn't trust me. We're not, we must be friends because we're now in that territory of having conversations about things that typically only friends talk about. And when I said talking about values had that kind of positive pressure where it pushes people together, you can almost think of villains as having like a negative outside pressure, to where if we're out there standing together in the open world and I say, there's something over there that I hate and it drives me nuts and I don't like it, and you're like, I hate that thing too, I also don't like it. Now we're sort of pushed together from the outside. It's sort of, I've identified a them that's out there, so now we're an us. And in the world of us versus them, we're on the same team against that particular enemy. Another way to think of it is people say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think it was Sun Tzu that said that in The Art of War originally. I'm not sure. I would say don't quote me on that, but I just put it on video and recorded it, so obviously you can. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in that, by the way, so I can quit saying it that way. But the idea when they said that was that if you have an enemy that you're in a skirmish with on a border, you go find another border on the other side of that guy, and you find someone who's got that same beef with them, right? Their common enemy, and then you team up so that now you have double the power, but it's just a temporary alliance. You're both uniting against a common enemy, and you'll work out whatever problems you may have between each other later. When you look at it from the standpoint that I'm talking about, where you share villains and obstacles and things that you hate, things you stand against, things you won't tolerate in your field or just in your life, if anyone in your audience has that dislike in common with you, it automatically makes them seem more friendly to you. It makes them feel more attuned, like you're on the same side of whatever argument it is. Just the same as if you went into, a sports bar to watch a game and your team scores, the people who cheer are now on your side. So like if the guy on the side of you cheers, even though your team might be the underdog, you're like, oh, it's us versus everyone else in here. It's a very powerful, very deep, very basic sort of mental understanding that people have in that way. One other thing I want to note, when you have this interplay of values and villains, positive and negative, it has this effect of, I want to say maybe map making is a good way to express it, to where what you're really doing is describing the landscape around you in terms of things you like, things you dislike, things you encounter, things you're interested in. And what that really does is, by describing that environment, the audience is going to see things in common with you. It's like your environments are going to kind of sync up, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But it's important to know you kind of want both. You want the lows and the highs. You want the goods and the bads, because, again, it gives you that more three-dimensional quality and a more honest quality, a more real quality, because nothing's being held back. The last thing that I want to talk about, and values and villains both kind of hint at this, because it is letting people a little bit behind the curtain and seeing the real you. But we're deliberately portraying them, and we're deliberately kind of dropping them out there as cookie crumbs just incidentally while we're sharing this material on video, or in the things that we're writing for our audience. You really want to make sure that you give them vicarious experiences that you're going through. So contextualize things. Like if you are a subscriber to my newsletter, I've written newsletters where it's not just an article, it's an article that is set in Vegas at an event where I'm speaking while I was writing the article. I talked previously to cult members might remember the story that I got the idea for the Cult of Copy while on vacation in Mexico. And a lot of times my content will be like that, contextual, set in a place and a particular time. Even this environment where I'm recording this show now, I don't know if I'll have this office together, but it's pretty cool. I like it. I don't know if I'll keep it, uh, permanently, but it's cool. It's a 164-year-old farmhouse. It's behind a pizza parlor slash bar that used to be a gas station. It's in the middle of my quaint historic suburb that I live in outside of Atlanta. Even that environment is something that people can experience vicariously because I share it with them. And that vicarious living, even if it's not necessarily related directly to your field, is important to people. And the reason it's important to people is because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it portrays you almost in a way that they're so used to hearing about in fiction, right? You become not only this person that they interact with, but you're like a character in a story. And it almost makes them interested in seeing where the story is going to go. Because you're not just talking at them about your subject like some teacher, and you don't care what the teacher does when he leaves the classroom, right? Most people don't. But you're involved in aspects of that character's life. You want to see where it goes. And that gives them an additional incentive, an additional reason to become invested in continuing to watch. They want to see what else is going to happen. And even if it's not the main focus, like I do these weekly shows, I talk to my Cult of Copy group all the time. I don't think they're super involved in my life, but the people who are interested and pick up in those tidbits because they resonate, bring them up. So people will ask about my family or ask about trips that I've mentioned that I've taken or ask me about my background in art or whatever the case may be, because I put those things out there and people connect with the things they connect with and become involved, and it's another reason to keep listening to me, which obviously for the purposes of my business and keeping people paying attention and listening and tuning in and hopefully, giving me money eventually to buy my stuff. The reason that they pay attention becomes more and more personal to them and almost unexplainable, right? You want to get them in a position to where they're like, I don't know, I just like them, makes sense to me, or just really, really like them. And you'll see this a lot for like hugely popular pop culture figures. Like people can't even explain anymore why they like them. People be like, I love the Beatles, and you say like, why? And they'll be like, because they're the Beatles, man. What do you mean, why? Like they can't tell you why anymore. It just seems apparent that everyone should like them because you like them so deeply on so many levels. You can't even comprehend that someone might not like them because there are so many reasons that you do. That kind of thing doesn't happen instantly. That builds up over time. And you may have heard me talk about the concept of exformation before. What we're really doing when we put all this information in front of people, we want them to absorb it, internalize it, and remember it, so that later when they see other communications, those good feelings, those good connections, those things we have in common all come into play. So I don't have to repeat them. So later on down the line, I can, send you a message that say, hey, this is pretty cool. I think you'll like it. And it'll be a link. And if you click on the link, it might be something to buy from. And you'll be like, man, I do like that. That sounds great. Part of the reason you like it is because I said I would like it. And you feel like we're buddies and we have things in common. And if I say I like it, you feel like you would like it too. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to persona. But first, we are right at the middle of the show. And my timing, as always, is impeccable. So as this show grows in popularity, I will offer these advertising spots to anyone who wants one. If you're interested, please get in touch. Obviously, the show is new, but I intend to grow it. I'm committed to doing it every week. And I have a pretty big audience that I think is going to, download it and watch it and listen and click. So we'll just use it for a house advertisement. Just yesterday, if you've noticed my voice cracking today and me sort of having to keep excusing myself because my voice cracks, yesterday I gave a 3.5-hour long paid webinar for my Cult of Copy group on the subject of mastery, which is gaining skill and deep knowledge in your own field while growing an audience and effectively portraying that level of mastery so that they see you as an obvious expert as you grow into that marketplace. We covered 13, I mentioned that before, 13 points that have to do with mastery. The webinar content took me, like I said, 3.5 hours to go through. There were questions and answers along the way. It was based on a newsletter that I wrote that ended up being like 11,000 words. That newsletter is meant to be a chapter in a book that I'm writing piece by piece, but for the book, the chapter only needed to be 3,000 to 5,000 words, and I more than doubled that. So I said, let's have a webinar. We'll meet. We'll talk about it. We'll do a multimedia version with all this extra content, because when I publish the book, it'll get all chopped up. Anyway, long story short, the webinar is done. It's recorded. If you go to colintheriot.com, which is my name, COLINTHERIOT.com/mastery, that will be a shortcut to where you can pick it up currently at $50, but the price is going to go up very soon if you buy it there. You should get the recording, and you'll also get the issue of the newsletter that it was based on. The newsletter is going to have that article plus also links to some articles from the Cult of Copy Facebook group. If you're not already a member of that group, just ask to join, and I will approve you. And if you like the newsletter and you want to subscribe, you can find out it's inside the newsletter and all that jazz. So there's that. That's our advertising for today. But I think it was good. Everyone who attended the call, most of the people who attended the call stayed on it, even though it was 3.5 hours. And I think it was good stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, becoming a figure of influence, a guru-type figure, quote unquote, in your marketplace, I think you'll like it. It's only $50 for the time being, and the price is going to go up very soon. So if you're listening to this, check out that URL, colintheriot.com/mastery, and it's available from there. Moving on, before we move on, in fact, I should mention once again, if you're interested in having an advertising spot like this on my weekly show, please get in touch. I will be offering them to other people in not too long. Now moving on. So the next thing that we want to talk about is this mask aspect of a persona, right? We talked about how the origin of the word comes from these Roman comedy and tragedy and a bunch of other emotions, but those are the ones they usually use to represent it. It comes from these masks that ancient actors used to wear to express their emotion to an audience, and it had a little megaphone inside to amplify their voice. And we talked about when you're creating this character and portraying your character to your audience, why you want to share these little inside moments from your life to let them live vicariously through you and really come to know what you like and what you dislike. And the very, very powerful, I can't even explain to you how powerful this is, but the very, very powerful idea that underlines why you want to do that is because what you're representing to them is not just a person, you're a persona, you're a mask, you are a point of view that they can adopt. Because you've shown them what the world looks like through your eyes, and they've seen the world that you live in. They have a very powerful, they can almost hallucinate it. They have such a vivid imagination, and you've given them so much fuel to feed that imagination. So when you express to people what you like and what you don't like and what your interpretations of things are, all those things that you share with them that you have in common really make it so that they feel like what your opinion is what their opinion is, right? So that you already have opinions in common. Now, what you talk about with them as part of your work are usually things they don't already know about, right? Like that's why they're paying attention to you, because you're an expert in a topic that they're interested in and would like to know more about. When you create these personas and interact with your customers and clients and prospects and audience members over the long term, it basically makes it so that they feel like if they had the information that you have, if they had your knowledge, they'd come to the same conclusion and have the same opinion as you if they were as informed. But they're not, but they feel like they trust you and know you so well, they'll just adopt your opinion as their own. And once they do that, because you're this tightly bound figure with them, they feel a kinship with you, a closeness in perception and interpretation and values and villains and all that stuff. They can no longer tell that you're the one who gave them the opinion. They just adopt it as their own, and it becomes obvious to them as if they always had it. They forget that it came from you because they feel like it's the opinion they would have gotten on their own, right? They just give you their opinion-making facilities because they trust you with them. Again, I cannot over I can't overhype to you how powerful this position is to be in, because that's why you can over time give people these messages like check this out and just a link and drive huge amounts of traffic just from sheer influence, because there's all of these things, this exclamation in their head about you that affects what they read. So if they just see check this out, they think, well, why would he show me that? It must be really awesome, because everything we like is both awesome. You know, we both like awesome things. We like the same things, and we think the same things are awesome. He sent it to me. He must think it's especially awesome for me. And he really does know me, because I can tell from all the conversations we had and all the things we have in common. None of this is obviously verbalized in their head, but it's all in there from all these previous messages that you had in these previous encounters and interactions, so that when they see that recommendation for some kind of product, all of that becomes presumption on their part. And because it's presumption, it's their own idea to react to whatever it is you show them. But more than likely, if you're doing this the right way, they will react exactly the way that you want them to. So you don't have to say, hey, go buy this. You don't have to say, I think you would like this. You don't even have to say, I like this. You just say, hey, check this out. And they'll react as if you had said all those things, but they'll think it was their own idea. Again, I can't express how valuable this ability is to be able to do this with people. And again, what it does when you express to them your point of view, it makes your persona into a mask. They can see through your eyes. And not only that, I mentioned it's important to have a voice and speak out against the things you don't like. You give them a voice. Many people are way too shy and too self-conscious to do things like adequately express themselves against the things that they think are unfair or unjust in the world. If you speak out against those things in front of your audience, you give them the voice that they don't have. You become a good guy fighting on their side, even if you're not very effective at it. Like, I complain about all kind of things about my market, but I'm not an activist. I don't do anything. I'm just basically bitching. But a lot of times people don't even have the courage to bitch because, again, there's that stigma. There's that fear of portraying yourself in any way negatively if you are involved in business, as if that will drive people away. But really, it will drive people away, but it makes the people who like you even more. And I would much rather have people love me or hate me than just be lukewarm about me or not have a strong opinion either way. Because I can work with people who love me. It's easy to build a business off of having an audience of people who love you. And if there are people who don't like you, rather than convincing them to love you, just get rid of them so they can't poison all the people that already love you. Just make them leave, shun them. So it's important to give people those galvanizing choices. So don't be afraid to be judgmental. But like I said, being a person who speaks out against these things that you both think are bad, that you both think are negative, is you're giving them a voice. You're saying the words that they don't get to say. Not only are you a spokesman for your own business to them, you almost become, in their mind, a spokesman for them against like the unfair world, whether it's just in your industry or way out there, in national politics or global climate change. I don't know. Could be anything, right? But you get the idea. You become their voice if you express a voice that they feel you have in common. So what else? Um, like we said, opinions, when you present people with opinions, the kind of thing that you can do that will, over the long term, make people want to give that opinion making facility over to you is when you express opinions about things, you want to look at information that's in front of you and interpret it, right? Like that's why people come to you, is because you're going to interpret things that they found and come up with a reasonable response, right? So look at things that are happening in your industry, even just out there in the world, current events or whatever. Get good at analyzing things and expressing it. And what you specifically want to do is figure out what the cause is. Tell people, like, well, of course this happened because this, and this naturally cause it and lead to it. And those things are bad. Then predict the future outcome based on what it is that's happened or happening or what they're doing. Again, most people are sort of scared of having to make decisions or having to form their own opinions. They don't trust themselves. Maybe they secretly don't think they're smart enough or informed enough. They don't want to be found out. They don't want to be made fun of for being dumb. So they find somebody they feel like is smarter than them, but thinks the same way that they do. And if that person agrees with what they want, what they feel like their opinion is, they'll lock in with that person and then adopt the rest of that person's opinions too. Because like I said, they just sacrifice it over. And by defining the causes of things and, figuring out if it's a bad thing that happened, you point out the negative things that led up to it and make villains out of them. And if it's a positive thing that's happened, you point out the things that were done right, that you support and that you want to propagate. And then when you use those to predict the future, again, don't think that you can make bad predictions and the audience is going to turn around and like chew you to pieces. That same mental bias that makes it that they forget all of the stories you told that have nothing to do with them, make them forget predictions that didn't come true. They look for the ones that are going to come true. They latch onto those. They forget all the ones that were not accurate, which is, by the way, why phony psychics are able to succeed and profit, is because they'll make a ton of guesses, most of which are wrong, but you latch onto the ones that are right and forget all the rest because you're latched onto those. So when you come out of the session, you think of how incredibly accurate they were when really they weren't that accurate at all. So again, you're sort of divining the causes out of the past and predicting things that happen in the future, both of which are things people avoid doing. And by you doing it and doing it with confidence, it makes people feel like your opinions are super well considered and based on the future and based on the past and based on the present. And you get the benefit of people feeling like this guy really thinks of everything. He knows all the angles. There's nothing that comes up he doesn't know. And you'll know you have people right where you want them when they start bringing things to you to ask about what you think. That is the signal to you that they have already given up making their own ideas and conclusions. They've just turned it all over to you. Hey, Colin, what do you think about this? I saw this the other day and thought, I want to know what Colin thinks. Why would they want to know what I think? Because it's going to influence the way they think about it. People are just giving me the keys. I don't mean for that to be weird if you've done that in regards to me. I obviously, I think I handle it pretty responsibly and ethically. But when you do that with your audience, that's how you can tell they've bought in to the power of this, is they no longer need to take the responsibility on themselves to inform themselves and develop a reasoned opinion because they trust yours so much. Of the predictions you make about what's going to happen in the future, the more of those that come true for them in their experience, or even better, if I make a prediction, I say, here's a situation that exists, here's what I think is going to happen. Like maybe someone will ask me, hey, I have a copywriting client, we're in this situation, I don't know what's going to happen. What should I do? I'll say, well, if you do this, they're going to do that. For that new guy, he has to take my word for it and maybe try it. But if what I'm advising them is based on experience and I'm making this prediction, but like if I do it in the context of the cult, like if they asked in a post and everyone can read it, veteran copywriters who read that prediction, who have experienced that same thing, it has the same effect because I'm confirming their own experience. And then people who are just suspicious that that's what would happen, their suspicions are confirmed. So really, making those kind of predictions are powerful for every potential kind of person in my audience, except maybe the guy who hates me and is predisposed to say, oh, well, you said this would happen, and I watched, and I made sure, and I came up with 50 reasons why it wouldn't be the case. That's one of those people you end up driving away anyway because their values and villains don't match up with you the right way. So most of the time, they aren't even following you to begin with. That's why it's important to make these galvanizing figures that are confident and specific, because there's almost never going to be a peanut gallery of people there heckling you in front of your own audience because they don't like you anyway. They've left a long time ago. So there's that with the opinions. The next bit to talk about is like why do people turn this ability over to you? And I think I really want to stress that it's got nothing to do with how smart anyone is, whether they're going to do this. Really smart people get busy because they're very smart and they're effective at what they do. They usually have tons of other things to do, so they look to people with the same opinions as them, the same opinion-making mechanisms, to explore fields that they don't have time to explore themselves. So your busy business person is going to have like his favorite news guy or commentator, because that guy is in charge of my political opinions. He does all the legwork and he looks at it and he reads the news and he interprets all of this, that, and the other thing, but I give him my permission to create my opinion for me because I trust the way he's going to interpret all of that stuff. So when he has an opinion, it just goes right in as if it was my own. I can't even remember he's the one that said it. When I repeat it to other people, I might very well say, for the sake of example, like Rush Limbaugh is very effective at this. I'm not a fan personally of his content, in that I'm not a believer of his politics, but I'm a big fan of the way he controls his audience through expressing these things. So he is someone who expresses opinions in such a way where he has very, very intelligent fans. And it's not about how smart or dumb you are, whether you follow someone charismatic like this. If they're effectively portraying themselves in the right way, you're going to repeat what he said and you're going to say, Rush agrees with me, even though you wouldn't even be aware of the situation for which he gave you that opinion if you hadn't listened to the show and he had informed you of it, would be an example. And I don't mean to single him out. I just had talked previously about people that I like that do it. People that you like and dislike both take advantage of these powers all the time. Now that you're aware of it, you'll probably see it a lot more. But why do people surrender their opinions? And I forget who said it. I've heard Frank Kern say that he heard Gary Halbert say it, but I've never seen Gary Halbert say it. I've seen Dan Kennedy say it. I'm not sure where it originated from, but someone is repeating someone else. So anyway, that's the three guys that I've heard it attributed to in various ways. I don't know who said it, but somebody said people walk around with their umbilical cord in their hand wanting to plug it in, looking for somewhere to plug it in. And that is a very powerful kind of metaphor, because the idea that people are kind of returning to the state of infancy in their head, where they're not responsible for coming up with their own opinions and values and morals, they can just have them handed to them by a parent, that's a very powerful perception, right? Like people want to have an informed opinion, they just don't want to be informed. They don't want to have to think. They don't want to have to reason and consider, and they don't want to make a mistake. So they put that burden on someone else to take the risk of making a mistake. And they find someone that, like I said, they feel is smarter than them, but thinks the same way they do. And then they hand over the steering wheel, basically. And it's that effect. It's, I trust you as much as I would trust a parent when it comes to providing me with how the world actually works and what my opinion should be. Please tell me what to do. Um, the fact is, really no one knows the right way to live in any regard. No one knows the right way to operate. Even if they did, even if they know a way that works, they don't know all the ways that work. They don't know all the things that won't work. They just know their one little pocket. But it's that confidence, that unshakable, solid opinion, and the idea that you have an opinion on everything and it seems well developed and well reasoned. Those things are what draw people to those kind of figures. So that's how even seemingly intelligent people can fall sway to weird, charismatic cult leaders that seem to talk bananas nonsense, yet here's this rich guy that gave him his entire fortune. How did that happen? It's through the cumulative effect of this, where they're looking for someone to just tell them how to do it, and they want to sacrifice that responsibility. And if someone comes along and reinforces that you can see through my eyes and see new things, but you can trust that the way I tell you it is real, even though you haven't experienced it yourself, because we have all these other things in common. So if I saw thing A and had a response A, and you saw thing A and had a response A, and I saw thing B and had a response B, and you saw thing B and had a response B, then I see thing C and have a response C. You've never seen thing C, ever. You've just never encountered it. But because I had a response C, you'll think, well, I'll probably have a response C too. So that's what my response is going to be. And over time, again, more and more, your audience, if they like you, they're going to adopt what it is that you're doing. So now that we're, I think I have one more point. Let's see. No, that's it. I covered it. Confirmation and validation was the last note that I had. So this being the cult of copy, our purpose as an organization being the discussion of the darker side of persuasion without any taboos or any hesitation. But we look at it for the purposes of informing the public, educating them on what kind of things manipulators may be doing to them, but also because the only difference between persuasion and manipulation is intent. So if you're an ethical operator and a legitimate business person that actually gives value to people's lives, and you're not twisting people's arm or forcing them to do anything, you can gain a lot of benefit by using these techniques that evil people use, because you have a duty. If you actually can help people with what it is that you do, you have a duty to persuade them to take action and accept your help. And if you truly do help them, no one's ever going to complain and say, boy, I sure love what you did for me. I just wish you wouldn't have sold me so hard. So do good work. Use this only for good. If you use it for evil, I'm not going to punish you, but my experience is that the universe will. So use with caution, and hopefully you can stay out of trouble with what I gave you. We are right on the end of the show. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to recap again. My name is the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio. I am the host of this show, the Cult of Copy Show, and also the Pontifex Maximus of the actual Cult of Copy organization. You can join our ranks at cultofcopy.com, which is just currently a shortcut link to our Facebook page. We have a newsletter. We have lots of posts, lots of friendly people. We talk about this kind of thing all day. You're more than welcome to come. Just ask to join, and I manually approve everyone. We have over 6,500 members, approaching 7,000 members. So we are happy to have you. Just ask to join, and then don't get too upset if it takes me a while, because I actually will check you out. And if your Facebook page is lame, you can't get in. But to recap, we'll have one more commercial message. I just did a 3.5-hour-long webinar on the subject of mastery, how to acquire knowledge and skill in your marketplace while at the same time building an audience and adequately portraying your level of mastery to that audience so you seem like an obvious and well-versed expert in your field. You can get that from colinterio.com/mastery. It's currently only $50, but the price will go up. Again, that's colinterio.com/mastery, COLINTHERIOT.com/mastery. If you want to know more about it, please feel free to get in touch if you join the Cult of Copy. I'm not hard to find. This has been the Cult of Copy Show. This is our first official episode. New episodes are recorded live via a Google Hangout every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern on this YouTube channel. In addition to the recordings being hosted on YouTube, I'm currently working to get them turned into podcasts on iTunes, Android, and any other platform. If you happen to be listening in on one of those or watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button or whatever mechanism there is for doing that kind of thing if you like what we talk about, because, like I said, we'll be here every week with more. So that is right around an hour. Man, my timing is amazing. I haven't lost my touch, even though I haven't done a live show in like a year and a half now. But thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Bye-bye.